Ethan Kane's wrists were raw from the steel cuffs, his breathing steady but shallow. He sat in a circular chamber, one of several prisoners lined up like forgotten artifacts. The room was vast and ceremonial, with vaulted ceilings that seemed to stretch on forever. Light cascaded down from crystalline panels high above, casting a faint, eerie glow on everything below. Across the chamber, a figure of regal authority descended from an elevated dais. Princess Karelai's every step resonated against the polished floor. Her presence was magnetic, slender but commanding, her obsidian armor catching the light in sharp angles. Behind her trailed a trio of her own kind, each outfitted in ceremonial uniforms, their faces devoid of expression. Ethan noted the way they moved, fluid and precise, like dancers trained to suppress any hint of individuality. Ethan's attention returned to the princess. Her golden eyes locked onto his, cool and assessing. When she spoke, her voice carried an accent that Ethan couldn't quite place but found unsettling nonetheless. "You have trespassed into Ilveran territory," she announced, her tone even but sharp. "By decree, the penalty is death." Ethan's mouth went dry. He knew the words were coming, he'd heard as much during his initial capture, but hearing them in person struck with the weight of finality. His fellow prisoners stirred uneasily, their chains rattling, but no one spoke up. The tension was thick enough to taste. "Hold on a moment," Ethan said, forcing his voice to steady. "This is all a misunderstanding. My team and I, your team and you," Karelai interrupted, "entered the heart of our protected space, bypassed every warning beacon, and defied the very boundaries of our sovereignty. Is that your idea of a misunderstanding?" Her calm stare silenced him for a beat. "No," he said finally. "But we're not soldiers or spies. We're researchers. We were on an exploratory mission when our ship's systems failed. The navigation error dropped us here." Karelai raised a hand and one of her advisors stepped forward, whispering into her ear. She listened intently, her expression unreadable. When the advisor stepped back, she addressed Ethan again. "Even if I believed your excuse, what guarantee do I have that you're not here to gather intelligence or lay the groundwork for invasion? Your people have long shown a willingness to take by force what they cannot earn." Ethan grimaced. "That's not who we are. Not all of us." Karelai leaned closer, her golden eyes narrowing. "I'm expected to believe that your people's history of conflict and conquest is suddenly irrelevant? Why should I risk trusting you?" Ethan met her gaze, holding his ground. "Because we're more than just our past. I can prove it if you give me the chance." A tense silence settled over the chamber. Ethan could hear his own heartbeat, a steady drumbeat against the backdrop of the low hum from the overhead lights. Karelai's advisors exchanged wary glances, but she gave no indication of their counsel influencing her. Finally, she straightened. "Very well. I will grant you a chance to speak." The other prisoners stared at her, some with relief, others with confusion. Karelai gestured to her guards, who stepped forward and removed Ethan's restraints. He rubbed his wrists, still unsure what to make of the sudden shift. "Come," she ordered. "We will talk." The guards flanked Ethan as they led him out of the chamber. He glanced at the other prisoners but was offered no comfort in their expressions. Their silence, if anything, seemed to be a warning. They passed through a series of hallways that twisted and turned, all lined with unfamiliar symbols and intricate carvings. Ethan tried to commit them to memory, just in case. As they moved deeper into the Ilveran stronghold, the air grew warmer, the faint scent of something floral wafting through the corridors. Eventually, they emerged into a smaller, more intimate room. A low table stood in the center, surrounded by cushions, with a faintly glowing crystalline centerpiece that filled the space with a warm, golden light. Karelai gestured for Ethan to sit. The guards remained by the door, their expressions still unreadable. "You have until my patience runs out," Karelai said, taking a seat across from him. "Tell me why I should let you live." Ethan cleared his throat. "I'm part of a scientific team from Earth. We were tasked with studying cosmic phenomena, gravitational anomalies, subspace rifts, the kinds of things that could help chart safer travel routes. We weren't looking for conflict. Our vessel hit an uncharted subspace distortion, and we ended up here." Karelai rested her chin on her hand, watching him with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. "And yet, your ship had no means of turning back?" "Our systems were fried," Ethan said. "We barely managed to restore basic life support. By the time we realized where we were, we'd already been detected by your patrols. It wasn't intentional." Karelai tilted her head. You speak well for a man who just narrowly avoided execution. Have you trained for this? Ethan shook his head. Not exactly, but I've learned that panicking doesn't help. I just need you to believe me when I say we're not a threat. She considered him for a moment longer before leaning back. Your story is plausible, but plausibility alone does not buy trust. I'm not asking for your trust, Ethan said quickly. Just the opportunity to prove we can work together. If you release my team and our ship, I'll provide you with all the data we collected. We're explorers, not invaders. Kareli studied him in silence, the weight of her scrutiny pressing down on him. Your confidence is intriguing, she admitted finally. Very well. I'll grant you a temporary reprieve. But understand this, human. The moment you step out of line, you'll wish I had ordered your execution. I won't let you down, Ethan said. The words came out with more conviction than he felt, but he couldn't afford to hesitate. Kareli rose, gesturing for the guards. Take him back to his quarters. Ensure he is well fed and rested. We'll discuss the next steps tomorrow. Ethan stood, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. Thank you, Princess. I won't waste this chance. Her expression didn't change, but she nodded slightly before turning away. As the guards escorted him out, Ethan's mind raced. He didn't fully understand her motives. Was she truly curious, or was she testing him for some ulterior purpose? Whatever the reason, he was alive, and that was more than he dared hope for just hours ago. Tomorrow, he'd have to prove himself all over again. For now, he let himself breathe just a little easier. Ethan adjusted the stiff collar of his borrowed Ilveran tunic. He'd been allowed to clean up, though not unsupervised, and was escorted to another chamber, this one smaller, more personal. Its walls shimmered with faintly glowing patterns that shifted when he looked directly at them, creating a sense of movement even in stillness. The table at the center was set with a collection of dishes unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Bowls of glistening fruits and unfamiliar cuts of meat steamed gently, releasing a mixture of spicy and sweet aromas. One dish appeared to pulse faintly, as if it were alive, though the smell was undeniably appealing. Ethan hesitated, unsure where to start. The door behind him slid open, and Princess Kareli entered, flanked by two male Ilverans who seemed to be her personal guards. She dismissed them with a quick flick of her wrist, leaving only her and Ethan in the room. Her presence filled the space as if she commanded the very air itself. She gestured for him to sit, then took the seat opposite him. You seem hesitant, she remarked, eyeing the spread before them. Do humans not eat in the presence of their superiors? Ethan offered a small smile. We do. I'm just not sure what's safe for me. Kareli leaned back slightly. The food was prepared with you in mind. My people are thorough in such matters. Please eat. A host should ensure her guest is well fed before anything else. The word guest caught him off guard. Not prisoner, not trespasser, guest. He picked up a piece of what looked like fruit and took a careful bite. It was softer than it appeared, bursting with a tangy sweetness that spread warmth down his throat. That's really good. Of course it is. She reached for a small, jeweled goblet and took a sip of its contents. My chef has few rivals. Ethan set the fruit down, his curiosity outweighing his appetite. Why are you doing this? Kareli's golden eyes glinted in the low light. Doing what? Feeding me, talking to me when hours ago you were ready to have me executed. Kareli's expression didn't shift, but her gaze seemed to pierce him. Perhaps I am still considering it. Or perhaps I want to learn more about the human who so boldly claims to be no threat. Ethan's jaw tightened. What do you want to know? Everything, she replied smoothly. But we shall begin with the basics. Tell me of Earth. What kind of world produces beings like you? Ethan shifted in his seat, unsure how much to reveal. Earth is diverse. We have different nations, cultures, languages. People don't always agree, but we share the same home. It's a planet full of life, constantly changing. Constantly changing, Kareli echoed, as if tasting the words. And yet, you find ways to adapt? We have to, Ethan said. Nothing stays the same forever. She leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hand. And what of your role among your people? Are you a warrior, a scholar, a leader? Ethan hesitated. I'm a scientist. I study, well, the stars, phenomena beyond our own world. I want to understand the unknown. Kareli's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. A seeker of knowledge. And yet, you ended up here in my domain without knowing what awaited you. Do you not find that ironic? It wasn't exactly intentional, Ethan said, his tone guarded. If I'd known we'd cross into your territory, I'd have done everything to avoid it. Corelli sipped her drink again, her eyes never leaving his. Perhaps, or perhaps you would have come anyway, seeking to uncover what lies beyond the edges of your maps. The conversation felt like a chess match, each exchange carefully measured. Ethan decided to press a little. What about you? You're obviously a leader, a ruler. How did you come to that position? Corelli's gaze turned sharp, though her voice remained steady. I was born into it. My lineage demands leadership, just as your position in that chair demands that you answer my questions. Ethan held her gaze. Fair enough. She reached for a small, bright blue fruit and sliced it with a slender, curved knife. You say Earth is diverse. Tell me, Lieutenant Kane, does this diversity breed unity, or does it create division? Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the weight of her question. Both. It makes us stronger in a way. Different perspectives, different skills, it pushes us to grow. But it can also lead to conflicts when people can't see eye to eye. Fascinating. She popped a slice of the fruit into her mouth, chewing slowly as if considering his answer. My people prize harmony above all else. Perhaps that is why your presence intrigues me. You represent a world that thrives despite its discord. That's one way to look at it, Ethan said carefully. But it's not always easy. We have to work for it. Corelli studied him for a moment longer before changing the subject. Tell me, what brought you into the field of science? What drives a human to seek the unknown? Ethan thought back to his younger self, staring up at the night sky. I guess I've always been curious. When I was a kid, I'd spend hours looking at the stars, wondering what was out there. It felt like there had to be more than just our little corner of the universe. I wanted to understand it, to see it for myself. Corelli nodded slowly as if his answer confirmed something she already suspected. Curiosity can be a powerful force. It seems we are not so different in that regard. Her words surprised him. He had expected her to maintain an air of superiority, but here she was acknowledging a common thread between them. It was unexpected. Curiosity has its dangers, Ethan said. It's what got me here. Perhaps, Corelli said, her tone thoughtful. But it also brought you to me. And I find myself wondering, Lieutenant Kane, whether that is a blessing or a curse. The question hung in the air, unanswered. Ethan wasn't sure he knew the answer himself. For now, it seemed survival depended on staying in her good graces and trying to unravel the enigma that was Princess Corelli. Ethan adjusted the unfamiliar belt around his waist and glanced at the tall figure walking beside him. Corelli's stride was calm, almost unhurried, but her presence still carried that unmistakable authority. The winding corridors of the Ilverin Palace were less daunting now, though still alien. Smooth, pale walls flickered with shifting patterns, almost like flowing streams of light. The floor beneath his boots was unervingly soft, yet firm enough to provide steady footing. They had been walking in silence since leaving the dining chamber. Ethan's mind raced, questions buzzing about what this latest meeting would entail. He knew better than to assume anything. If Corelli had brought him along for another test, he'd need to be ready. Do your people always fall silent when they're uncertain? Corelli finally asked, breaking the quiet. Her voice was steady, but her golden eyes cut toward him with a hint of amusement. I'm not uncertain, Ethan replied, though it was only partly true. Just curious. What exactly are we doing? You'll see soon enough, Corelli said simply. They reached a wide archway that opened into a room unlike any Ethan had seen before. Circular in shape, it was dominated by an enormous display in the center, a holographic projection that shifted between vibrant colors and countless constellations. Corelli gestured toward it with a graceful motion. This is the cartographer's nexus, she explained. It maps the known regions of space, including your own. It's where we plan our explorations, track anomalies, and monitor incursions. Incursions, Ethan repeated, frowning. Like mine? Exactly, Corelli said with a slight smile. But today we'll be using it for a different purpose. I want to understand how you see the stars. Ethan stepped closer to the holographic display, taking in the details. He could see his home system, Sol, nestled among countless others. Trails of light marked known hyperspace lanes, while glowing markers indicated regions of interest or danger. He reached out instinctively, and his hand passed through the projection, causing it to ripple. Do humans often interact with things before they understand them? Corelli's voice carried a teasing edge. Sometimes, Ethan admitted, curiosity gets the better of us. Corelli moved beside him, her presence almost too close for comfort. Show me where you came from. How did you arrive in our territory? Ethan focused on the projection, searching for the path his ship had taken. He traced his finger along a corridor of faint light. We were here studying a gravitational anomaly. Something pulled us off course, an unexpected shift, maybe a rift in subspace. Next thing we knew, we were drifting here. Corelli watched intently. And how would you avoid such a mistake in the future? We'd map it out more thoroughly, Ethan said. Adjust the parameters of our navigation systems, deploy more advanced sensors. With enough data, we could chart a safer path. Data alone is not always enough, Corelli said. Instinct, experience. These often guide us when data fails. Fair point, Ethan said. But we rely on both. It's how we've survived out there. Corelli studied him for a moment before turning her attention back to the display. With a flick of her hand, she brought up another region. One Ethan didn't recognize. This sector has long been considered unstable. What would your people do if they wished to explore it? Ethan hesitated, taking in the swirling patterns of light. We'd proceed carefully. Send probes first, monitor conditions, analyze the data before sending a manned mission. It's safer that way. Corelli nodded, though her expression remained thoughtful. And if the data suggested it was too dangerous? Then we'd wait, Ethan said. Technology improves, methods improve. No sense risking lives if we're not ready. For a moment, the two of them simply stood there, side by side, watching the shifting display. The silence wasn't uncomfortable this time. It felt more like an unspoken understanding. Corelli spoke again, her tone softer now. Do you ever fear the unknown, Lieutenant Kane? Ethan turned toward her, surprised by the question. All the time, but fear doesn't stop us. It just makes us more careful. And sometimes, the unknown turns out to be something we never expected. She tilted her head, regarding him with a curious expression. Such as? Ethan hesitated, unsure how to answer. Sometimes we find beauty in it, or new allies, new ideas. The unknown isn't always dangerous. Corelli looked back at the projection, her golden eyes reflecting the soft glow. An interesting perspective. Before Ethan could respond, another figure entered the room. A tall, broad-shouldered Ilveran male dressed in a uniform similar to the guards. He bowed slightly to Corelli, then addressed her directly. Your Highness, the preparations are complete. Shall I escort you? Corelli nodded, then turned to Ethan. Come, there's more to see. The three of them left the Nexus and moved into another part of the palace. This section was darker, the walls lined with shimmering panels that gave off a faint hum. Ethan felt the temperature drop slightly as they continued on. What's next? He asked, his voice echoing slightly in the quiet corridor. Corelli glanced at him. A demonstration. Something to help you understand our methods and perhaps to teach you something about your own. When they arrived at their destination, the doors slid open to reveal a chamber filled with sleek machinery and towering displays. At its center was a transparent column containing what looked like swirling blue energy. Several Ilveran scientists moved about adjusting instruments and studying data readouts. Corelli stepped forward, the male officer following closely. This is a containment field for a spatial anomaly. We've captured it here to study its properties. Your people encountered something similar, though far less stable. Ethan walked closer, his eyes locked on the swirling energy. What are you learning from it? That even the most chaotic forces can be harnessed, Corelli said. With patience, study, and discipline, we can transform the unpredictable into something useful. He glanced at her. And what happens if it breaks free? Her lips curved slightly. Then we have protocols to manage it. We plan for every possibility, Lieutenant Kane. It's why we have survived so long. Ethan turned back to the containment field, the swirling blue light casting faint shadows on his face. The hum of the machinery grew louder, and the air seemed to pulse with energy. He could feel Corelli's gaze on him as if she were gauging his reaction. It's impressive, he admitted. But what happens next? You learn from. And the cosmos. Ethan nodded slowly. Understanding. That's something we have in common. Corelli's eyes met his, her expression unreadable. "It seems we do." The male officer spoke up. "Your Highness, shall I prepare the next phase?" Corelli shook her head slightly. "Not yet. Lieutenant Kane and I have more to discuss." The officer bowed and stepped back, leaving the two of them alone again. Corelli moved closer to the containment field, her gaze fixed on the swirling energy. "Tell me, Lieutenant Kane," she said, her voice softer now, "what drives you to seek the unknown, even knowing the dangers it might hold?" Ethan considered her question carefully. "Because there's always more out there. More to learn, more to discover. And sometimes what we find changes everything." She turned to face him fully, her golden eyes steady. "I wonder if you truly believe that, or if you're just trying to convince yourself." Ethan held her gaze, standing his ground. "I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe it." A long silence stretched between them, the only sound the hum of the containment field. Corelli's expression softened just enough to be noticeable. "Perhaps you'll prove me wrong, Lieutenant Kane," she said quietly. "Or perhaps you'll prove yourself right. Time will tell." Ethan nodded, unsure of what else to say. For now, it seemed, their conversation had reached its end. But he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much larger. Ethan leaned against the smooth, cool wall of the chamber, staring at the data projections that flickered across the room. He tried to make sense of the strange symbols and patterns, but the Ilveran language still eluded him. Every time he thought he recognized a pattern, it would shift, rearranging itself into something entirely new. It was almost as if the data didn't want to be understood by an outsider. Corelli stood at the center of the room, her hands clasped behind her back, her posture as poised and commanding as ever. She hadn't spoken in several minutes, content to let the silence stretch as she studied the displays. When she finally broke the quiet, her voice was steady but laced with a peculiar intensity. "Your people are stubborn," she said, glancing over her shoulder at Ethan. "It's a trait I've noticed repeatedly. Even when faced with overwhelming odds, you refuse to admit defeat." Ethan shrugged, unsure how to respond. "Is that a compliment or a criticism?" "An observation," Corelli said simply. "I have watched you adapt to circumstances that would break many. Even now, you stand here, attempting to make sense of our data, as if sheer willpower will unlock its meaning." Ethan folded his arms, turning his attention away from the shifting projections. "I'm trying to understand. Isn't that what you want?" "I want many things, Lieutenant," she said, walking toward him. "But what I need is a reason to trust you." Ethan met her golden gaze, wondering where this conversation was headed. "I've told you the truth. I've done everything you've asked. What more do you want from me?" Corelli stopped a few paces away, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You claim to be a man of science, yet you speak of trust and loyalty as if they are quantifiable. Tell me, what is loyalty to you?" Ethan frowned. "Loyalty is about standing by your team, your people, even when things get tough. It's about doing the right thing, not just what's convenient." Corelli studied him for a moment, then nodded. "And yet, loyalty can be a double-edged blade. It can blind you, make you choose poorly when logic demands otherwise." "It's not always about logic," Ethan said. "Sometimes it's about doing what's right, even if it doesn't make perfect sense." Her gaze sharpened. "And how would you know what is right in a situation you do not fully understand?" "Because I trust my instincts," Ethan replied. "And I trust the people I work with. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I know what it means to stick by someone when it matters." Corelli's expression softened just slightly, though her tone remained measured. "Perhaps that is why you are still alive." He blinked. "What?" "Your loyalty. Your willingness to speak plainly, even in the face of power. It is unusual." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I'm not sure whether to thank you or be worried." She allowed a faint smile. "Take it as a compliment if you wish." Before he could respond, the doors behind them slid open, and another figure entered the chamber. Ethan recognized him immediately, Captain Rallan, the leader of the Ilveran patrol that had initially captured his team. Rallan was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with a stern, almost unyielding air. His uniform was immaculate, his dark blue skin glinting under the chamber's light. "Your Highness," Rallan said, bowing slightly before turning his sharp gaze on Ethan. "I trust he has been cooperative?" Corelli nodded. "More so than I anticipated. He continues to show potential." Rallan's jaw tightened. Potential can be dangerous if misplaced. He is still an outsider. "I am aware," Corelli said coolly, "but I will not make a decision based solely on fear." Rallan's expression didn't change, though his eyes flicked back to Ethan. "I hope you're right." The tension between them was palpable, and Ethan couldn't help but feel like a third wheel in a conversation he didn't fully understand. But rather than retreat into silence, he decided to speak up. "You don't trust me," he said, addressing Rallan directly. "I get that, but I didn't ask to be here. I'm just trying to do what I can to fix things." Rallan's gaze turned icy. "Fix things? You're the reason we're dealing with this mess in the first place." "I made a mistake," Ethan admitted, "but I'm willing to help. If there's something I can do to make up for it, just tell me." Corelli raised a hand, cutting off whatever retort Rallan was about to make. "That will be all, Captain. I'll handle this from here." Rallan hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Yes, Your Highness." As he left the chamber, Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "He really doesn't like me, does he?" Corelli turned back to him, her expression unreadable. "Rallan's loyalty is to his people, his duty. He sees you as a threat, no matter your intentions." Ethan frowned. "I don't want to be a threat. I just want to find a way out of this mess." Corelli tilted her head slightly as if considering his words. "Then perhaps it is time you prove it." "How?" Ethan asked. Corelli gestured to the projections. "You claim to be a scientist. Show me what you can do. Analyze this data, find a solution to the anomalies that brought you here. If you can help stabilize this region, perhaps I will consider allowing you and your team to return to your home." Ethan stared at the shifting symbols, his mind racing. It wasn't the solution he'd hoped for, but it was something. He nodded slowly. "I'll do my best." "Good," Corelli said, her voice calm but firm. "Because failure is not an option." Ethan rubbed his temples as he leaned over the console, his eyes fixed on the swirling mass of data before him. Despite hours of effort, the patterns still refused to yield any straightforward answers. Every time he thought he'd found a consistent anomaly, it would shift, change, or outright disappear. The Ilveran technology, as advanced as it was, seemed almost alien in how it presented information, fluid and ever-moving, a living puzzle he wasn't sure he could solve. Corelli stood nearby, her gaze steady as she observed him. She didn't speak at first, giving him space to work, though her silence carried a weight that Ethan couldn't ignore. He could feel her presence, her unspoken questions, and the pressure of her expectations. After another long moment of staring at the incomprehensible display, he let out a slow, frustrated breath. "All right," he said, turning to face her. "How exactly is this supposed to work? Your systems don't present data like ours. Every time I try to isolate a pattern, it shifts into something else." Corelli's golden eyes narrowed slightly, but her tone remained calm. "Our methods are not the same as yours, Lieutenant. We view data not as a series of fixed points, but as a dynamic flow. You must adapt to its movement, not fight against it." "That's easy for you to say," Ethan muttered, leaning back against the console. "You've had years, centuries, maybe, to learn this system. I've had a few hours." "Time is irrelevant if you lack the will to learn," she said, her voice sharp. "Are you saying you cannot adapt?" Ethan met her gaze, a flicker of defiance in his expression. "I'm saying I need help. I don't understand your process. If you want results, you'll need to show me how it works." Corelli regarded him for a moment, then stepped closer. She moved to the console and raised her hand, the swirling projections responding to her touch. The patterns shifted and slowed, forming a more coherent image. Ethan watched as the data began to align into recognizable streams, almost like rivers flowing into a central reservoir. "This," she said, gesturing to the central point, "is the heart of the anomaly. The key is to understand its flow. Everything else, these tributaries, are secondary effects. If you focus on the branches, you'll never understand the source." Ethan nodded slowly, his mind working through what she said. "So I need to track the main flow and see where it leads?" "Precisely," Corelli said. "But do not rely on your eyes alone. You must feel the patterns. The Ilveran way is one of intuition and logic combined." "Right," Ethan said, though he wasn't entirely sure how to feel a stream of data. Still, he returned to the console, this time trying to follow her guidance. He focused on the central flow, watching as the smaller streams fed into it, their colors and movements gradually making more sense. It was as if the data were alive and he was finally beginning to understand its language. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the soft hum of the machinery. Kareli stood beside him, offering occasional comments or corrections, but mostly letting him work. Ethan appreciated the lack of micromanagement. He needed the space to figure this out on his own. At last he saw something. A shift in the central stream, a recurring pulse that rippled outward and disrupted the other flows. He gestured to it, his voice filled with renewed energy. There. That pattern, it's repeating. If we trace it back, we might find the cause of the anomaly. Kareli leaned in, her golden eyes fixed on the display. You are correct. Isolate it and we may learn more. Ethan adjusted the controls, isolating the repeating pulse and highlighting its source. The projections shifted again, revealing a section of space that seemed to shimmer and distort as if viewed through a warped lens. Looks like a subspace rift, Ethan said, his mind racing. That's what pulled us off course. If we can stabilize it, we can stop these anomalies from spreading. Kareli nodded. And how would you propose stabilizing it? Ethan hesitated. I don't know yet. We'd need to study it more, run simulations, figure out the right balance of energy fields. It's not a quick fix. Kareli's expression remained calm, though her gaze was intense. You have made progress. That is commendable. But progress alone is not enough. You must follow through. I know, Ethan said. But I'm going to need more resources, more time. This isn't something I can do alone. Kareli tilted her head, considering his words. You will have what you need, Lieutenant Kane. But understand this, your success is not just for your benefit. It is for mine as well. He nodded, meeting her gaze. Understood. Just as Ethan turned back to the console, another voice broke the silence. I see the human has been busy. Ethan glanced up to see Captain Rallin standing in the doorway, his arms crossed and his expression as stern as ever. Rallin's presence always seemed to fill the room with a tension that was impossible to ignore. The captain's sharp, dark eyes shifted between Ethan and Kareli, a hint of skepticism in his gaze. Your Highness, Rallin said, addressing Kareli, do you truly believe he can stabilize the rift? Kareli remained composed. Lieutenant Kane has shown progress. Whether he succeeds remains to be seen, but I will not discount his efforts prematurely. Rallin's frown deepened. With all due respect, I find it difficult to trust an outsider with something so critical. Ethan felt the need to defend himself. I'm not just sitting here making guesses. I've identified the source of the anomaly and laid out the first steps towards stabilizing it. That's more progress than anyone else has made so far, isn't it? Rallin's gaze turned cold. Confidence is not the same as competence, human. Before Ethan could respond, Kareli spoke, her voice calm but firm. Enough, Captain. The lieutenant is under my orders. If you wish to challenge my decisions, do so in private. Rallin hesitated, his jaw tightening. Finally, he gave a stiff bow. As you wish, Your Highness. Kareli watched him leave before turning back to Ethan. Do not let him distract you. Focus on the work. Ethan nodded, though he couldn't shake the lingering tension from Rallin's presence. He returned to the console, his mind churning with possibilities. If he could find a way to stabilize the rift, not only would it prove his worth to Kareli, but it might also be his ticket back home. He wasn't about to let anything or anyone stand in his way.